We have somebody who's very passionate about the information security space.
I'm telling you, when I came into contact with cryptography,
The national character development.
hey, global shortage of positions, cybersecurity positions that cannot be filled. So we need people in the cybersecurity space.
Iggy, unaonaje?
The power that content creators have because you influence. Bobby atakuja aseme hii Coca-Cola hapa. Mimi kesho naenda kubuy Coca-Cola.
Meta as a platform has been earning from our own people.
Look, I'm introducing this, but you need that
Yes.
to use this.
Around 2021 after COVID, that is when people were talking a lot about the generative AI things.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the lead series. I'm your host for the day, Ms Apprielle Oichoe, and it's a pleasure to have you on this unique episode. So, as most of you are aware, we are celebrating the Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and our role today will be to volunteer our platform to be able to discuss about the importance of online safety, as well as also engage with our wonderful industry expert here on issues to do with information, knowledge, and insight on how we can be able to protect ourselves online, as well as just discuss about our journey into cybersecurity. So, without wasting any time, I would like her to introduce herself, and then we'll be able to move from there. So, karibu.
Asante sana. Thank you so much. So my name is Apprielle Oichoe. I'm a cybersecurity professional. I've been in this space since 2011, so right after my master's degree, which I did in the UK at the University of Bradford. I came back to Kenya. Interestingly, how I actually started working in Kenya is I looked up some cybersecurity companies in Kenya. At the time, it was very, very rare,
Yeah.
That is, we are talking almost 15 years back. So I looked up cybersecurity companies in Kenya because I knew Africa is where cybersecurity was needed at the time. And still is, because the West has been doing this thing for years before we got into the space. So I actually looked up cybersecurity companies, and I saw SRS was one of them. And the number of the CEO was online. And I actually called him from the UK and told him, I've been searching for cybersecurity companies to come and work with, and I found yours, and I think it's interesting. So I'm coming back, and I'm coming to work for you. And he laughed. Costa. He was costering.
Confidence.
Costering at the time. He was like, "Oh, okay. So where are you now?" So I explained to him. He asked me, "When are you coming? When are you coming to Kenya?" I told him in 2 months, and he told me, "Good, just come straight to the office and let's have a conversation." And when I came back, I went to the office. Of course, receptionist things. I was asked, "Do you have a meeting?" I'm like, "Yes." Well, I made the appointment like 2 months ago. I don't really have one now. But eventually, I got to meet Kostya and I got to talk to him. And eventually, I actually got to work with SRS. And that's where my journey into cybersecurity as a career began. With SRS. But then, just to go back to the introduction, so I'm a computer science major. Bachelor's major, then I did cybersecurity. And currently I am doing my PhD with Capital Technology University. Actually, I'm doing a Doctor of Science in cybersecurity. And my focus is the impact of organizational culture on cybersecurity and privacy culture.
So that's interesting. I know we'll be able to take some time and really unpack it as we continue. So I wanted to focus a little bit on your day-to-day. On your LinkedIn profile, I saw that you're the managing director for Infosphere. And we also have some initiatives, some women-led initiatives that you are championing. So that seems like a very busy day.
It's actually more busy than that because currently I'm also back to employment, which is a very interesting story. So I've always wanted to also just work in the humanitarian space. So right now I work with World Vision International as the Data Responsibility Technical Director. But I wouldn't be talking from that perspective today. But that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But then, so my day-to-day basically is just dealing with data, ensuring that data is protected throughout the data lifecycle, from creation of the data, how do we share the data, how are we storing the data, through the transfer, who are we giving access to this information? Do they need to access this information or not? What levels of granularity in terms of access and in terms of playing around or, modifying the data have we given? Is it the appropriate levels of permissions that we have given or not? So basically, my day-to-day is analyzing risks to data, basically, ensuring that we have sufficient mechanisms and sufficient controls or protections in place to ensure that this data is protected through the life cycle. So for me, it's security and privacy by design, intentional.
Yeah, that seems like quite it's a challenging role to engage with.
It is a challenging role, and this cuts across any role that I have taken. So basically, my journey is data and information, whether it's personal data or whether it's corporate data. My job is to ensure that this information is adequately protected.
Yeah. And I know we get to address this, but maybe just a quick question.
Yes.
Based on the experience you've had working in the country, what will then be your thoughts around, just where you think organizations are when it comes to the awareness around security and maybe some of the methods that they're implementing to ensure that they stay safe? Because I'll give you an example, like here in the organization, we train anywhere between 100 to 150,000 participants per year for different donor partners. And as I'm sure you are aware, they're very big on data. So, just where do you see organizations such as us and even other ones that you engage with as part of the enterprising model? Where do you see us when it comes to these considerations around being safe online?
I think, to be fair, I think we have come a very long way. Let me say that. There is intention, there is effort being put in. My only question would be, is it the right? Are we doing it right? So there is the intention, definitely. People have put in so much. Organizations are spending a lot of money to train their people. And we have moved from, I can say at least majority, a good number, maybe not majority, but a good number of organizations have moved from looking at cybersecurity as the IT thing. So anytime we spoke about cybersecurity, and I intentionally prefer not to use the word cybersecurity. I prefer to use information security because I feel it is I feel it's more inclusive. Because once we put the word cyber before the security, people still automatically it goes to IT. And cybersecurity or information security is not an IT thing. And I always keep asking, like anytime, whenever I have the opportunity to speak at a conference or to speak to people just to have a conversation, I ask organizations, how many organizations have an IT strategy? A lot of them will have an IT strategy. And when I ask how many organizations have an information security strategy, it's tricky. And I usually ask, so what drives your business? Is it information or is it IT?
Was it IT?
Information drives your business. IT enables your business. Two very different things. So I don't understand how an information security strategy is not at the top of things. An IT strategy only comes under the information security strategy. Because the information security strategy cuts across every kind of information that you are processing as an organization. And so if information drives your business, then we should start looking at information from a different lens. It's a business problem. It's not an IT problem. So I can say we have moved, but is our focus correct still? Even when we are doing awareness, how are we doing our awareness? Because one of the biggest things that we need for us to succeed as an organization is a proper information security culture. which is what I'm studying.
Yeah,
so that's it.
Yeah,
so we need a proper information security and privacy culture. But then to get to that, we have to change behavior. One of the things that awareness does is to build, the awareness training does is to build the awareness.
Yeah. The sense of keenness around what's happening around
to remove this ignorance. But my question is, have we successfully removed or lessened?
Yeah.
In fact, the word is lessened the ignorance to a point where our employees can confidently say that, you know what, I understand the importance of information to this organization, not from an organization perspective, from an individual perspective.
Yes.
I understand the importance of information to this organization, to myself, and I understand why it is important for us to be able to protect this information. And from that, you'll realize that the awareness sessions take a more personal impact and approach than taking it from a business perspective. And I think that is where we are having challenges because this whole thing is about behavior change. So people will only behave in a certain way based on their perceptions of this information. And that their perceptions will drive their intention. So the intention to behave in a positive manner. So awareness itself is not enough. We have to work on our corporate cultures. We have to work on our corporate information security and privacy cultures. And this is something that I'm studying to help organizations do. Because organizational culture definitely has an impact on security culture. Whether we agree or not, do we even know what our corporate culture looks like? You know, and this corporate culture definitely impacts on our security culture, impacts on our information security culture. So if information drives our business, we need to start looking at things very, very differently.
That's true. And I think that's a discussion that we've always tried to have here, even at our parent organization, Aquit, because as I've shared with you, we deal with a lot of data on an annual basis. We have a lot of knowledge products that we continuously develop and streamline for different donor partners and so on and so forth. And so the question that we always ask, even when we share these things with our stakeholders, is who is in charge of the IP? Who's the custodian of this information? And sometimes it gets a little bit tricky because, again, for a donor partner, if they fund a process, the expectation, which I came to realize this risk, the expectation is that they own.
Of course, they own the entire process, including the data, including the information. Yes.
And explaining that to stakeholders, especially within the period of 2022, which was the general election, and even just within this COVID-19 era, it's becoming very, very difficult to actually engage with people. It's not as simple as, hey, we have this opportunity, just sign up here, give us all information.
No. Yeah. And it shouldn't. And it should be a complex conversation. Because the truth of the matter is, tell me, every single industry that you can think of, at least 98% of the industries ride on personal information.
Definitely.
Banking, it's personal information. Hospitals, personal information. Insurance, personal information.
Yeah.
Which industry do you know that doesn't ride on personal information? So it becomes a very, 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 very critical topic and conversation that we need to have because this is people's data. So think about it. If I'm working for, let me just bring in the NGO space into this right now because I believe they handle the most sensitive information.
It's true.
For vulnerable people, individuals who are at a place where something like consent doesn't even make sense. Because you see, if I'm coming to ask you, give me permission to use your information to access a certain service. When you're dealing with vulnerable people, they need the service that you're offering. So something that like consent is not the basis to use, to ask these individuals for their data, for example. And yet we have to use their data to offer them specific services.
Yeah.
So it becomes, we have to be able to place ourselves in the shoes of the people whose information that we are using so that we can act in a fair manner. And, so that we can act in a manner that gives them confidence that, whatever it is that they are giving us is going to be adequately taken care of. Because your personal information is your identity. And that's a fact. It's your identity. It's your complete identity. So if I misuse it and it falls into the wrong hands, then I am exposing you as an individual, not only to cyber harms, but also to physical harm.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is very dangerous. So, the way safety is considered, the life of a human being is considered so critical. Let's say, like in the aviation industry, the airlines. I don't see how different cybersecurity is.
Yeah, it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be different because this is safety. We are looking at security and safety of an individual, whether they are in this. We are looking at it as an individual or an individual within an organizational space or a corporate space. It is still an individual. That aside, now we have corporate information, IP, which you have just spoken about. It takes a lot of time for people to come up with different products and different services. And I mean, we need to appreciate people's efforts.
No,
we don't just misuse someone's property. Someone has come up with all these things. And that's why I believe regulations have come into play. Cybercrime acts, we have a number of them across the world. We have data protection regulations. All these are meant to kind of force organizations, even those that are not really willing, to actually consider these things. Because let's be honest, business is about making profit whichever way you can make profit. So if you're going to trample upon people's rights, misuse their information to make money, some organizations have gone that way. But is it the correct way to do things from an ethical perspective, So those are tough conversations that we need to have as businesses.
And you've picked my interest. I know we're supposed to discuss about the journey, but another thing that I found you talking about that was a bit controversial was around, there was this statement you made around banking systems tracking our online activity. And I wasn't quite sure about about what it is you were trying to communicate at that point in time. I was actually shocked. Because I started looking at, okay, so how does that work? Why is it tracking all of my different transactions? What is it trying to achieve?
It's not just banking systems. It's a lot of online applications are using tracking activities to track your activities across domains. So sometimes it's even cross domain. So if I move from this domain to another domain, there are different tools that have been put in place. A lot of them are I will not mention the tools, but there are tools that are put in place that can track your activity across domains. And that's why it's very, very important for us, whether we are doing mobile applications or online applications, to read the terms and references. And I always beseech organizations. I live and works a bit biblical and lyrical right now, because I mean, those terms and references sometimes are so long. People will never get to read all those terms and references. Like, can we just, if you genuinely are seeking consent from an individual to use their data, keep it simple, sweet. Let people read, understand that we'll be taking this and this and this information from you for this and this and this specific purposes. Our terms and conditions are, if you do not grant us access, you'll not be able to access this service. But if I don't understand why we have such long terms and conditions to accept to use an app or to be offered certain services. And there are certain apps that also ask for information that they do not need.
That's true.
I can understand Uber asking for my location.
Yeah. Because that particular
They
request
need
is
my
aligned
location.
to their service. Yeah.
Exactly. It's aligned to the service. I don't see why any other application that has nothing to do with my location is asking for my location.
Yeah.
Another thing is they always ask for our contacts, access to your camera, access to your messages.
Yeah.
I find that absolutely ridiculous. And that is why these legislations have come into place, where they say data minimization. You will only get access to the data that you need to offer me that specific service.
Yeah.
And because organizations are notorious, I'm speaking from running an organization myself, and we are notorious. We definitely would get away with everything if we could.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the regulation plays a very, very important role in trying to streamline and trying to box us into the space that we need to be in so that we don't misuse. Yeah. Because if left to our own devices, I'm telling you that will not happen.
It's going to be tricky because I was trying to simplify it to a colleague of mine who were listening to that particular clip at the same time. My issue is if I've subscribed to a specific service, that's fine. And there's a monthly payment that I'm supposed to, it's automated. That's okay. Whatever APIs need to take place for these two parties to interact and make that transaction happen, let them take place.
That's fine.
What I'm not expecting, however, is for it to move to another, for a financial institution to move into other platforms or other sessions that I have, and essentially use that to generate whatever information they're generating for themselves.
Yeah, cross-domain tracking happens. Yeah. It happens.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, before we go too far ahead into the podcast, I think as you guys have been able to see, we have somebody who's very passionate about this space, about the information security space. I wanted us to just take a few steps back and kind of understand where your journey started. I know you talked about having to study in UK, where you actually pursued you pursued and successfully finished your master's in cybersecurity in the process of now moving towards the PhD space. But I know for the listeners who are maybe at the beginning of their journey, they would want to understand, because again, as we shared, I think, off the mic, it's not an easy to access space. Some of us, I think, have had to go through the 4-year program, which it's important. Still getting that foundational computer science knowledge, I'm sure, was important for you. But once you start realizing that you want to specialize in a specific area, then it becomes a bit tricky, especially because of the lack of opportunities here. So, could you just take us through what that journey was like for you? Some of the challenges that you faced and how that shaped your mindset as you now transition into these higher levels of your field.
Okay. Yeah. So let me just start by saying that cybersecurity was not my career of choice when I was... No, it wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't my career of choice when I was in high school. I studied in Alliance Girls. When I was in high school, I knew I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. Oh, okay. That was what I wanted to do at the time. My plan A and my only plan was aeronautical engineering. But then I knew I didn't want to deal with stuff related to people. I didn't want to be a doctor. And back then, a lot has changed in the past, like 5, 7, 10 years. Yeah. Back then, the careers were still engineering, medicine, law. So I come back and I tell my mom that, okay, now I want to do computer science because it's the next thing to
the closest thing to
the machines. So I still want to do machines. And now my mom is like, Sasa, what kind of... what kind of career
how did you get to that?
Anyway, to cut that, so I come from high school. That's not my career of choice. And I go to campus, and I went to African Nazarene University. I'm doing computer science. And my first year, my second year, I still was not... I was like,
sold on
I was like, is this really it? Is this really is this really what I want to do? Then in my third year, now after I've settled in, I'm starting to enjoy the coding. It's nice. We got African Nazarene back then. I don't know if they're still doing it now. Had this exchange program, or they used to bring lecturers from other Nazarene universities across the world to come and take a semester. So I happened to be in the class of this one Dr. Biga, and I keep saying I need to find him to thank him. I happened to be to take distributed systems, which Dr. Biga was taking. And we were only 2 ladies in that class. And out of around 40-something guys.
Yeah.
and the class was complex. It was complex. And the first cut he gave us, we all failed. So he told us, if you fail the next 2 cuts, please drop the unit.
I don't know why they do that, but anyway.
So he told us, if you fail the next 2 cuts, please drop the unit. Anyway, so I survived the second cut. So the third cut, he comes back to class and he distributes the papers to everyone, and he holds onto my paper. And he says, Apprielle, can you please see me after the class?
Start wondering.
Yeah, so I'm like, what? Did I fail this? What happened? And then he asks me, have you considered getting into cybersecurity? And I was like, what? I've never even heard of, at that point in time, I had never heard about cybersecurity. And he's like, I've noticed a consistency in the way you think and the way you respond. So have you ever considered getting in cybersecurity? And I'm like, no, but it sounds interesting. So please tell me about it. And so he told me about it. In fact, he tried to help me at the point get into Johns Hopkins. But then it was so expensive at the time. It was free for US citizens, but for everyone else. At the time, they were actually encouraging people to study cybersecurity. So it was more or less free. But for people who are not citizens, it was very, very expensive. So that was... So I ended up waiting for 3 years for me to actually take a master's in cybersecurity, and not in the US. So it took saving, my mom, gathering together whatever she had for me to be sent to the UK to do cybersecurity. But I can tell you that journey started from a mentor. And that's Dr. Bika. I didn't know anything about cybersecurity at the time. He basically guided me on what it entails. And I found it to be very interesting. And so through my journey, even during my master's, I had very, very, very helpful professors. All the way. Dr. Andrea Cullen was very, very helpful to me during my master's. She answered questions, And then when I came and started working with SRS, my bosses, Kostya and Jason and Jonah, that all of them were just very helpful in shaping, this. So now it's a young new career. I've just come back from my studies. I must say I had very, 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 very helpful mentors. And I think mentors are key.
Yeah, definitely.
Particularly when a field is new and you don't know which... I knew the aspects of cybersecurity that I liked. But with the shaping and the guidance, I eventually found my footing and I found my path. And so, that's been my journey. So all along, I've kept in touch with the people who really built me, who made that difference. I'm still in contact with them. Anytime I get stuck or I'm thinking about something, one of the people who's actually on my speed dial is Jason Finlayson. Right now he's in Europe, but I always tell him, I'm thinking about this. What do you think I should do? And Jonah, who's here, so I have access to him. I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think I should do? And so it's very important to also listen to people who have walked that journey before you.
Yeah. And you mentioned something very interesting. You said in your class you're only 2 ladies out of around 40.
That particular class. My master's class was even worse, but yes.
So how do you go about establishing a voice in that space? Because I think one of the challenges that we've seen even from relatives on my side who are pursuing careers, tech-related careers, is the biggest issue is how do I find my voice? how do I establish my presence in a space that's dominated by a specific gender or a type of thinking maybe that's a little bit outdated?
Yes. Thank you for mentioning a little bit outdated. We have stereotypes. We have stereotypes that have basically shaped the careers that women in Kenya, and I dare say in Africa, have taken. Because technical careers have been generally left for the men. And I'll mention something that I hope government of Kenya is going to change pretty soon. Before I go back, let me just say, even how projects and tenders are apportioned in this country does not favor the women in tech.
For sure.
It doesn't favor the women in tech because they say 1/3 goes to youth, 1/3 goes to women. But let me tell you the jobs that are left to that 1/3 goes to women. Cleaning, catering, which I find absolutely ridiculous.
It's true.
And that needs to change. Because if you're going to say 1/3 of all the government tenders are going to women, let it be all the government tenders. Architecture, engineering, cybersecurity, 1/3 should go to women, not cleaning. So basically, you as the government of Kenya are still telling me as a woman that you only think I am fit to offer services that are catering.
And again, it's not that I'm sure it's not a service that maybe you're demeaning or anything. It's just, it's a question of why don't you just open it up?
Yes, open it. If you're saying 1/3, let it be 1/3 across everything. Not just specific things that you have decided. And these are the stereotypes that we are trying to break. And so by asking how I have found my voice, the first thing I'll tell anyone who's getting into the cybersecurity space, by the way, cybersecurity is about passion. And not just cybersecurity, any career is about passion. If you enjoy what you do, you will excel at it. And why will you excel at it? It's because you will put your focus. You will actually not shoot yourself in the foot. You will put in the effort to be good at what you do. However the challenges may look like. At some point during my master's class, I called my mom and told her, I didn't know what I was signing up for. I'm coming back home. I can't do this. And my mom told me, "Wait, do you know how much money we have spent paying for that? You better come back having finished that. Figure it out, and you must finish it." And you know what? And I stuck through it. I was sleeping at 3 a.m., leaving the cybersecurity lab at 4 a.m. But it's because it was something that was so interesting to me. And it's so interesting. So one thing, you have to keep at it. So if you're passionate about what you do, one thing is passion. If you're not passionate about cybersecurity, don't get into it because of the money, because it will wear you out. Because this is an industry that keeps changing every day. We have to be on our toes like all the time. People are coming up with new mechanisms of attacks. You have to be on your toes. And remember, on this other side, we are always playing catch up. The people who are trying to defend the organization, defend ourselves, are always playing catch up. Because we are spending so much time trying to strategize and to come up with, okay, what strategy can we... These other people, some of them are even funded. As we speak, in 2024, according to Cybersecurity Ventures, the cybercrime industry is sitting at $9.5 billion USD.
Okay, that's quite a lot.
So if we are still trying to play catch up.
So when you say 9.5 billion, this is just based on crimes that now...
Cybercrime. I mean, look at the amount of ransomware attacks that we have lately. And lately it has become a lot of ransomware attacks because there is an end game to this. Am I gaining financially? And most of it is actually financially driven. So if I can get money out of this, why not? Some people just do it for fun because they can. I mean, nowadays, learning about cybersecurity, all you need is YouTube and Google University. I kid you not. And you will get more than sufficient skills to excel in this industry. So if you are looking to be in this industry, the first thing is passion. The second thing is consistency. You have to be very consistency, keep up to date. It keeps changing. It changes very fast. The third thing is you have to build resilience.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it can get tough. I'm telling you, when I came into contact with cryptography,
The national character development.
hey, you have to build resilience. Number 4, be willing to learn, because you will never be at a point where you know everything in cybersecurity. You have to be willing to learn. And then number 5, you have to be willing and ready to listen to people who've walked this journey before you.
Yeah.
Because they have insights. And another thing that I would say that my PhD class has taught me is the power of collaboration across regions. Because the cybersecurity issues that some of my classmates are dealing with. I mean, I'm sitting in class with people who are researching on the US military zero trust. We are looking at critical infrastructure. You know, in Africa, we can't really say we're dealing with critical infrastructure at this point.
Not to that level.
Not to that level. Because our water, our electricity is not fully on cyberspace. But we are getting there. We are moving there. And we need to be prepared. So we need to engage in these conversations with other people who've gone before. So that we know that when we get to this point, these are the things that they did. These were the mistakes they made. This is how they managed to succeed. I'll talk about something like which country is this that has a very impressive electronic voting system? I forget.
But in Europe? Or?
Yes. It starts with an E. Oh my goodness, I've forgotten. But these are some of the things that we need to learn. We need to learn from other countries. And not even going far. Rwanda, our neighbors, have managed to implement a very good public key infrastructure system for public procurement. And it works like a charm. I mean, I was so impressed when someone called me and told me, within 10 minutes, you will have your certificate. If within 10 minutes you don't have it, we are going to call you back. And for sure, on minute 8, I called them and told them I have everything I need to be registered to offer services with the Rwanda government. I think we have learnings. If we are ready to learn, as individuals, as organizations, as nations, from each other, we'll go very far.
Yeah, I think that's important. You also mentioned just having mentors and essentially creating an ecosystem where information and knowledge is shared. I think that's something that, as much as we'd like to think it's talked about in all these different corners, I think where young people, specifically young women, struggle a lot is that they don't have access. So you can want to mentor people, but now them accessing, I think, those services is where it becomes a little bit tricky.
It becomes tricky.
Yeah.
That's
so
true.
I wanted to just within what you're discussing, maybe talk about your mentorship programs as well.
Before I speak about that, I remember the country, it's Estonia.
Oh, Estonia. Oh,
yes,
okay.
They have a very impressive electronic voting system. Yes. So on to the mentorship.
So having been one that has benefited from, mentorship at a very high level.
Yes.
I also read somewhere that you also have a mentorship program that you've championed for a while. I believe it's Cyber Heroines. Yeah, so just take us through what it is you do and why you're so passionate about that particular initiative.
Okay. First of all, it's called Cyber Heroines. Heroines, meaning she. Not that we are cutting out the boy child out of this. Let me be very, very specific.
Yeah.
But right now in the cybersecurity space, and why Cyber Heroines is, we've not been very active in the past few months since my PhD studies became a bit tight. But then the whole idea behind Cyber Heroines is, first and foremost, we have a 3.5 million global shortage of positions, cybersecurity positions that cannot be filled. So we need people in the cybersecurity space.
Yeah.
One. Secondly, women only make up 22% of the cybersecurity workforce.
Yeah.
And again, it's the things we were talking about earlier, the stereotypes that have generally driven the boy child to a certain careers. In the girl child to certain careers, which is changing. So it's a good thing because at least now we are sitting at 22%. In 2017, it was 11%.
Yeah.
So we can see, like, in the past almost 10 years, at least we've gotten a 10% almost.
And I'm sure even that 22%, as you continue to kind of elevate the positions, it becomes even less and less.
Exactly. As you go high up the ladder, when you're getting to leadership, the women in cybersecurity leadership gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
I'm sure, like, as a managing director, when you attend those meetings, do you see...
Oh, my goodness. There are so many times I've walked into a room to do a presentation and it's just men.
Yeah.
Initially. In fact, when I started when I started Infosphere a few years back, so I walked into this organization to do a presentation. And I was supposed to meet with the MD. When he saw me, he decided I'll meet with his executives and not him.
Oh, yeah, just because
That's one of the challenges.
Yeah.
Because it's like, she's a female, she's this tiny. Back then I was very tiny. She's this small. And like, you know what? No. And then right there and then he offered to buy my business. That's one of the things that you experience. But then I took it. I actually laughed about it. I told him, no, we are not ready to sell right now. I mean, we just started. At least give us, So that's one of the things that aside. But even when I was working for SRS, and I can understand that was back in the day, many years back, I would walk into a client's site and they're going to do a presentation. And they're like 40 men. And I'm the only lady. And I'm doing this presentation. And I'm supposed to be guiding you guys through this project.
Yeah.
I'm the lead consultant for this project. It put me in very interesting positions, I must say. Another thing is also the challenges that you face as a woman is that I've experienced situations where I'm told, madam, usually these deals are made of beer.
Over a cup of tea.
And I can't invite you to this because... And I'm like, come on, why don't you just treat me like a colleague?
Yeah.
I'm not any different from that guy you're going to take a cup of tea with. Come on, And so these are some of the challenges that being a woman being a minority, particularly a woman in a male-driven field. First of all, you have to work twice as hard for people to actually believe.
To even just recognize you.
To even recognize you. And then again, you said, how do you find your voice? Imagine you have to push yourself to the front. You have to be. So what I personally have done is I have made sure that I know my stuff. If I'm going to speak to do a presentation or something, I make sure that whatever it is I'm going to talk about, I know it. I will never know 100%. But I will make sure that where I can speak about the topic authoritatively. So that's one thing. So as a woman, you have to do that because men will generally be listened to. As a woman, you need to work extra hard for you to be listened to, particularly in a man's field. That's another thing. So you have to focus your energies into doing the right things, knowing your stuff, crafting your stuff. It takes time to craft your skill. It's not just a walk in the park. It takes time to craft your skill. You have to build confidence, and confidence is built by getting into these spaces, even with the men, get into the spaces. If you can link up with other women who are doing the same thing, link up with them. And that is what Cyber Heroines is trying to do. We are trying to bring these women who are in the same, who are in cybersecurity, the ones who have more experience to try to nurture the ones who are
Just at the beginning of that
just
journey.
at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I must say, cyber heroines, okay, so we had started out as She Legends, and then Africa Cyber Defense Forum was born. So when Africa Cyber Defense Forum was born, I spoke with Gilbert and I was like, why don't we do this why don't we come up with cyber heroines, which is looking at the women's beat in Africa Cyber Defense Forum. And then I decided, instead of running with two things at the same time, I just decided to merge She Legends into Cyber Heroines, so that it's just one entity. So last year, we actually did a program for children. Initially, it was supposed to be age 7 to 12. In partnership with the Kenya National Library Services, because they're all about digitization. So I was like, we cannot digitize and leave security behind. They have to go hand in hand. So if we are telling our kids about digitization, we also need to tell them about the dangers that they are bound to experience on cyberspace. And so we ran this thing last year with the Kenya National Library at the National Library offices. Where we ran as cyber heroines, ran a cyber security summit. I'll call it a summit for children for 3 days. It was supposed to be age 7 to 12. We ended up getting age 5 to 19. Interestingly, we had around 65 to 70 children, and parents have been asking me since, we need to do this, we need to do this.
It's important, by the way, to provide those opportunities. And I can speak as a person who works in a women-led ICT for Development organization. You can see it firsthand. I remember like the first 2 years or so, I was brought in to essentially consult on a programming or a web and app development program. And so one of the things that I had to do is, first of all, recalibrate my bias. Because I came in with the mentality of, ladies, from where? Homa Bay, NCI. Okay, that's a bit tricky. What's their level of digital literacy? So let's see, those small questions that I was asking, I didn't know at that point that as I was asking these questions, I was using them as a disqualifying sort of mindset. But when you went there and actually spent a lot of time with them, did they need extra mentorship? Of course, because again, the cultural norms there are placed in such a way that, they don't have direct access.
Exactly.
But by the time we were finishing the project, I think after 18 months or so, we had real developers coming out of that particular space. I think 5 of the applications that are being used now in aqua farming have come specifically from that particular program. So I know firsthand how impactful a mentorship program can be. And I'm even glad to see that you had people who are as young as, you said, 9 years old?
Yeah, 5.
5 years old.
I had to sit overnight now to come up with a totally different thing for the 5-6-year-olds. Because I mean what I was telling them. So I broke down cybersecurity into images for them, like, this is a firewall. This is how it protects, and I was very surprised. Those kids they understand everything. When I was asking questions, they were answering. The little ones were answering faster than the older ones. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is impressive. I was very impressed.
That's what shocks you about interacting with the community out there.
The mind. And that's why I believe that cultivating the mind at a young age is the most important work that any human being would ever do. And I definitely want to run this program again. It was a bit expensive, so I would look for partnerships. If I can get the partnerships, that would be amazing. So this one, we did it, Infosphere fully paid for the program for the kids. Hopefully we'll do another one in December. Hopefully, and so maybe we'll see how that goes.
I think you should, and even for the people who are listening to, if there's any way in which we can be able to support, I think for us, we'll be more than happy to kind of engage, because as I've said, and as you also mentioned, it's about access. Once you enable access, then I guarantee you that you'll even be shocked.
That is true.
I was there, I remember after like 6 months or so, I remember going into one of the classrooms just to talk to the instructors. And the instructors were telling me, now the issue that we have is that we have to go and study overnight so that when we come back, we're in a position to problem solve.
Yes.
Now it has moved from theory to now.
It's actually
it's
practical.
purely on problem solving. Okay, I have this issue. Okay, how do we deal with it? Let's go back and see how we can be able to develop. So yeah, it's very interesting, and I'm sure as you look at this should be now the second cohort. You'll be looking
the second cohort.
Yeah,
and when we're looking to do it a bit differently, but that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah.
But
Mtutafute by there. I'm sure we can find ways of collaborating.
Yes.
So
thank you.
Going back to the bigger picture, we are celebrating cybersecurity this month. You've been an expert there for around 10 years or so. You've sat in different positions and really taken the time to understand where we are. Do you think we're in the right direction? This is generally at enterprise or even individual level. Do you think we're heading in the right direction, or given some of the emerging technologies like AI, for example, do you think there's need for us to be a little bit more keen to the environment, and with that, provide solutions that can be able to protect us in a lot?
Yes, I think we are generally moving in the right direction. We have moved from where we were.
Yeah, definitely.
Significantly. Big changes. We are moving. However, the challenges are also becoming more complex. So the question is, are we moving at an appropriate pace?
Yeah, compared to...
I do not believe so.
Yeah.
So we are moving, but I don't think we are moving at an appropriate pace. And that can be because of many different things. I mean, sometimes funding, resourcing is a problem. Again, let's look at the infrastructure in Africa. We just spoke of critical infrastructure and how everything in the West is kind of... In Africa, we are still struggling with that. Let me just talk about Kenya. There are places in Kenya we still do not have electricity. We have students going to classes in school. We are talking about equipping every child with a laptop or an iPad. How? You see. So we have challenges that we need to tackle before we are fit to actually be in an appropriate space on the global scale. That's it. It doesn't mean that we are not moving. We are moving.
Yeah.
However, I think tech is moving way faster than we are. Way faster. And so now we are talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning. We're talking about quantum computing. And I'm just thankful. I personally believe it is by the grace of God that quantum computing is not yet a reality because we are not prepared for the realities of quantum computing. The world at large is not prepared. Yes.
I mean,
Africa, even worse.
We're struggling with AI alone even as we speak.
Yes, AI is still, imagine, much as we are talking, AI has become a buzzword. AI is still in its infancy. AI is still in its infancy. Yes, so now we are doing so many things. AI has given us visibility. We're actually fighting cybercrime using AI because now we can, analyze behavior. We are able to analyze, malware and predict, how it's going to morph, how it's going to change, thanks to AI. We are now doing cryptographic, AI security, all that stuff, thanks to AI and machine learning. Our education system is not even at a place where we are not ready.
We are not ready,
What our students are being taught in school, academia and industry are totally disconnected. And we have to come to a way where we are merging academia and industry. The way the West has done it is in class, industry experts are actually brought to take some of the sessions such that it becomes very, very, very practical. So that even when you're being given a project, it's a project that an organization will use in the industry. I know some institutions have started doing that, but maybe we just need to have an overhaul of how our education...
it needs to be integrated into the semester
Exactly,
structure.
into the semester structure. We were just talking about how a purely cybersecurity course does not exist. Cybersecurity courses are put into computer science courses, And while in other countries, someone can register and for a bachelor's degree that is cybersecurity. And from there you go on, you know. Not that me having taken the computer science route was a bad thing. I think it was actually a good thing. It built such a solid foundation for me to get into cybersecurity. But I think these are things that we need to start discussing as a continent, as a country, you know, so that we can be able to compete on the global scale. So as emerging technology is getting stronger and evolving faster, we need to rethink our strategies.
And that's on awareness creation, which I think you've talked about. Skilling again, is very, very important.
Awareness creation, skilling, I think is key. Skilling is critical because we can be aware, but if we don't have the skills to implement what we are seeing, then it's a problem. And this is where I think the governments in the West have done really well because they have provided funding for their citizens to actually learn, to take up these courses. So it's a challenge to African governments. Why don't we provide funding for people to actually study AI, for people to actually study cybersecurity as courses, data science, you know, all these things that are changing the world as we knew it before.
And I think the frustrating thing is that even when you get an opportunity or you get a platform to have these discussions with them, as you've said, there's this immediate bias. You mention anything to do with cybersecurity, IoT, data science, and analytics. Those are IT courses. Those are tech courses. So we don't have interventions. We don't have interventions that even specifically speak towards a layered approach to training, where I don't have to empower a farmer to be able to create their own sort of generative AI model. However, I can train them on how to use the existing ones to be able to essentially improve their socioeconomic activity.
Exactly.
So that's and I think that's what we need to kind of start streamlining in our conversations. You know, just attacking skilling from the point of view of we don't have to all exist within the more technical aspect. You can focus on literacy and, you know, just build the approach as you continue to engage. And I think that's where we struggle a little bit.
True. And we need to use what exists more, even as we are building what does not exist, because that gives us a stepping stone and into the direction that we actually want to go. So I think we are moving, but there's more. There's so much more that we need to do in terms of linking, first of all, academia with industry. Industry working with maybe government to make some of these things a reality. Government working with academia for skilling. You know, there's so many things. From an individual perspective, I can say this young generation, they know a lot.
You're happy with I usually ask, I think, experts at your level, you're happy with the type of questions that you are seeing being asked?
I had a boy in that class. He was about 13. He was about 12, no, maybe 11. He was young. I'm telling you that boy, from day one, I was like, this boy, if I would give him a job, I'd give him today. Everything I was talking about with regards to cybersecurity, every question I answered, he knew. I was like, one of your parents is either in cybersecurity or you are very, 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 very exposed to this space. But then generally, the younger generation have it. I mean, this is the generation that was born with iPhones,
with smartphones,
with smartphones. You know, they can do anything. Interestingly, like I got an iPad for my nephew and I kind of locked it. You know, the next time I went, he was accessing. I'm like, how did you do this? I told him, I'll take it away from you because you're not supposed to be coming to be undoing the things that I am doing.
The measures that
I'm putting in place to ensure that, you know. And I was like, this young generation, no. So what they need is guidance, direction. Because now what comes in is the very dicey issue of ethics. So if I want to learn how to hack, there are YouTube videos, 15, 17-hour-long YouTube videos that show you how to go through. If I want to hack Active Directory, trust me, there's a YouTube video that is a very good step-by-step instruction video on how to hack Active Directory. So the language that we need to be talking to these young people is, yes, now you have access to all this information, but how do we shape your direction so that you're moving in the right place?
Yeah. So it's very, very important. And even on the other side of the spectrum, I was very surprised one day when we were dealing with some farmers in Tanyuki. And we had developed an open source, data management system to help with tracking their workshops. And so one person came and asked us, "You have our email, and you have our email and our biodata. So why do you steal again? Why do you need the ID?" And we sat and asked ourselves, "Anyway, why do we need these IDs?"
Too much information.
Yeah. Well, am I gathering these IDs? This is a report or a database that's going to be shared with our donor partners as evidence that we have trained. So the only points of interaction we were foreseeing is maybe an environment where they decide to call them just to try and understand how the program has impacted. So I was surprised. It was a weird question to deal with at that particular point, but I was surprised with the level of knowledge where, at the very least, I know that there's some information, going back to what you said at the beginning of the podcast, there's some information I can give, but there are other aspects where I have to question you. Why exactly am I giving you this information? Because it doesn't serve, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't serve any purpose outside of what it is intended.
Exactly. And I'm going to pick up from what you have just said. Getting into buildings in this country is very frustrating.
Yeah, that's true.
I must say.
That's true.
It is very frustrating because I do not understand why I'm walking into a building. Someone takes my laptop serial number. My car number plate has already been taken. You take my ID number. You take my phone number. And then you want to keep my ID. First of all, that is a huge risk to me as a person. I've given you my phone number, I've given you my ID number, and you want to keep my ID. Let me ask you a question. Why do people think we all these rogue phone calls that we get, messages and all that stuff, where is it coming from? I completely believe it's from those books that we write while we're walking into buildings. Completely unnecessary information. I have never seen this anywhere else in the world, and I travel a lot. I have never seen it anywhere else in the world. And this is something that we need to change. You know, I asked this very question. I asked one of the askaris as I was walking into a building, why are you collecting all this information? First of all, why do I need to leave my ID with you?
Yeah, for 45 minutes an hour, sometimes even a full day. Why are you sitting with my ID?
A full day. Why are you sitting with my ID? This person has a phone. It is just a matter of taking the phone and my ID. They have all my information, you know? All my information, you have it. You have my car plate. I've already written down the name of the person I'm going to see in whatever building it is. And I was thinking, how does this serve the purpose of my visit to that building? I was told it's security measures. Okay, which is a fallacy, by the way. I was told it's for security measures. I don't believe that. You don't need my ID.
Because by the way, when you lose something in that same building,
yes,
them even retrieving and getting it back to you becomes a big problem.
It's a big problem. The thing I was told is in the event there's a fire. I was like, that is the biggest fallacy of them all. Are you going to go through all this book? You, as the receptionist, there's a fire. You'll be at the nini point, at the evacuation point. No, seriously. So in case there's a fire, we're going to call. I'm like, no. What practical, and I'm going to give a practical, for anyone who's listening to me, a practical solution would be, the person who's in that office who I'm going to see, I have listed down who that person is. That person knows if you're doing your job well, the person knows if there is a fire, this is the evacuation plan. Me, as someone who's going to visit you, calling me to start telling me about an evacuation plan when there's a fire is useless.
It's not going to work,
That person who I have gone to see knows. It is enough for me to detail the name of the person that I am going to see. Another thing, if you have already collected my ID number, why do you need to keep my ID? That's another scenario. If there's a fire, I will not go back to start running to collect my ID. So we need to look at things from both perspectives. It makes no sense. Absolutely no sense to be collecting people's information like that. And I keep asking, at the end of the day, where is this book going? No one has ever answered that question.
No one knows.
And I'm like, we have a Data Protection Act. If I were the data commissioner, that is where I would start. That is a problem.
Those books that you're feeling.
That is where I would start. Because if we are truly as a nation protecting people's information, that is a problem. Synthetic identities have been created from that. SIM swapping, because someone has my phone number, someone has my ID number, all the details. I can recreate you.
Yeah.
That's all I need, because these are my national, if you have my national ID, you have my national identity.
Phone number.
And you have my phone number. For most of our transactions that we run online, you need your ID and you need your phone number. So if you have those two things, you have access to my life, basically.
That's true.
So these are the things. So you are asking, are we prepared? As long as we are still taking all that information in buildings, we are so far. We are so far. That is one thing that we need to act on as a nation with immediate effect. I've never seen it anywhere. And I have been very safe everywhere I have gone. I have never seen this.
Even for me, I don't think I've seen it anywhere.
It is absolutely ridiculous.
So the challenge is for us to start questioning these things as it's been stated, and hopefully, I know sometimes utapata wale nyako kichwa ngumu kidogo, they'll start arguing with you there. But I've been to events where I've seen people, especially people from the neighboring countries, questioning and asking, why do you need all of this? You have my name, you have my phone number and my email. That should be enough. In case of anything, just call me. And then I'll be able to respond.
How is my ID going to help in the event of a fire?
That will make sense.
How?
So maybe as we conclude, I wanted to speak a little bit about Infosphere. Strictly from the point of view, as I shared early in this podcast, I work for an organization known as Acquit. They also deal with a lot of information that they kind of put together, synthesize, and share with different stakeholders, depending on what it is they want to communicate. How do you go about providing the right solution for organizations like us? Because we've talked about creating a balance between, first of all, getting them to a place where they can be aware of what's at stake, what risks are they vulnerable to, and then working with them together to kind of develop a solution that works for them. So how do you go about providing these solutions to those companies?
Okay. By solutions, I'm going to assume that you don't mean like a product, because
because you've talked of culture and again, exactly. Sitting with a tech person, I think it's a little bit easier. But now when you sit with your fellow CEOs,
that is where the issue now all comes in, because CEOs. Tech, yes, but are we meeting, at the end of the day, are we meeting the business objectives? That is all a CEO wants to know.
Yes.
Are we meeting the business objectives? What do our figures look like? And so, yes, when I'm doing a presentation of that kind, or when I'm trying to engage an organization, the first thing, and my journey has changed, by the way. So right now, coming from a place where culture is my key focus, it is. I'm not even looking at organizations the same way I used to before. So normally, okay, let me just give it this way. There are two ways. Normally, I'd walk into an organization and try to understand what your core objectives are as an organization and how you view information. That's the starting point. Remember, I said so many organizations have an IT strategy, no information security strategy. I think that's a big fail on our parts. All of us, both as the people who are implementing and the organization, I think that needs to change with immediate effect. And so how does the organization view information? generally. Once I do that, I'm kind of doing like an assessment of your needs.
Yes.
You know, so this is how you view information. Is it still considered a tech thing, or is it being looked at as a business driver, which is how it should be looked at? And then once we already have that conversation, now it gives me an inkling of whether you have considered the risks appropriately or not. Because if you're still not looking at information as a business driver, your risk assessment is not sufficient. Immediately, I know your risk assessment is not sufficient. And so, have you considered the risks to this information that is supposed to be driving your business? And then from there, now we can tailor. So that tells me, okay, so we've done a risk assessment, we've not done a risk assessment. These are the findings. Then from there, now we start looking at, okay, so based on your objectives as an organization, based on the risks that you are exposed to, this is the path that you should take in terms of getting into a cybersecurity or information security program. And I believe every organization should have an information security program, because that kind of defines how they move in terms of how they handle their information. So if you don't have an information security program, then how are you implementing your information security?
Implementing the strategy.
Yes, so it's in silos, and it's so if you have a program, kind of brings sanity and brings a form or a format to how you're handling your information security. It makes it basically easier, and it makes it more. It makes it easier for the management and the top executives to actually do metrics. Because you need metrics. Because how do you measure something that doesn't have direction? So you have to have something that is guiding your direction. And along the way, then you can say, these are the particular metrics that we are looking at based on certain objectives and based on certain goals. So based on these objectives and these goals, these are the things that we have put in place that we want to achieve. These are the mechanisms, 1, 2, 3, bang, bang, bang. And then how do we assess this? That's the only way you can come up with metrics. If you're doing stuff ad hoc, it becomes a bit difficult to do that. So that is one thing I would say.
Yeah, and I think, as you stated, for me, I think when we began the podcast, once you mentioned the issue around organizations having an information security strategy, I started wondering, okay, I haven't had this anywhere within our own interactions with different staff members within the organization. So I think it's very, very important, even as we conclude, that organizations and businesses, I'm assuming, it's very important as we start talking about an IT, you called it an IT strategy. As much as we focus a lot of our energy there, it's also important that we have an information security strategy. I think if there's one thing that organizations or enterprises should learn from this particular interview, it's just the importance of making sure that is set up. And to be honest, it's going to force a lot of difficult discussions, even here in the organization. But to be honest, and as I shared with you, I was looking at 150,000 entries. 150,000 people accessing your resources in a 12-month period is not a joke.
That's not a joke. That is a huge amount of data. Yeah. That's a huge amount of data. And then if you don't have an information security strategy, so how are you handling it? Because you see, the beauty of the information security strategy, it moves beyond IT. It's moving beyond all the gadgets that we are using and all the systems that we are employing to make the processing of this information easier. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that this information exists both in the physical space and in the IT space. Definitely. So the IT strategy is not sufficient to look at all your information security issues. And so, so when it comes to that, those are the things I look at and I advise differently. So if you don't have an information security strategy, how can we go about helping you come up with an information security strategy? If you don't have an information security program, how do we help you come up with an information security program? If you have all this and maybe you just want to test and see how you look like, then we organize an audit, a comprehensive security audit. If you want to see how penetrable or how exposed your systems are, then we say, okay, now you need a vulnerability assessment and penetration test and stuff like that. And also, we help you align with different industry standards, like, for example, the ISO 27001. I have led so many of those projects in this country and outside of this country. And so many other standards. There are so many other benchmarks that you can benchmark against the NIST cybersecurity framework. And now different industries are actually coming up with different cybersecurity standards that you can benchmark against. And this is homework for the organizations. Which industry do I sit in? Do we have an information security standard? How do we best? Because these standards have been developed by people who have sat down for years and assessed what are the minimums that we need, for a specific particular industry. And I think benchmarking against them, there's nothing negative about that, but there's everything positive about that.
And it's important because, again, even in our own world of ICT for development, most donor partners now, especially ones that are directly involved with the UK and the US government, it's a requirement. It's a requirement. They'll tell you, okay, that's fine, you're training 50,000, but tell us about how you go about ensuring that their data is secured and that it's not shared. Because I've been in programs even outside this organization where we train people, then in the middle of the workshop, you see Safaricom coming in, Airtel coming in, and hey, how many people do you have? Can we market and use? And so you do it innocently thinking, you're providing a service to the people, but all of a sudden they're getting 10 to 15 messages in a 4-week period.
Imagine.
About different products. Some of them that have nothing to do with.
And that's why, the data protection regulations are very important. Why are you collecting this information? We have to be very specific. We are collecting this information for this particular purpose. And at least every data protection regulation I have seen specifies that you cannot use that information or you cannot even transfer it for purposes outside of what you initially collected it for. So if the purpose changes, then we need to seek consent afresh. So if we are collecting people's information for a specific purpose and then we end up sharing it or using it for a different purpose, then we need to be very conscious of the fact that we are doing the wrong thing. We are not doing the correct thing.
However small
the shift is, we are not doing the correct thing. If it's not a purpose that is related to the initial purpose, we have to do very many assessments. This is a dicey space that we are in. We have to keep evaluating, what are the benefits, what are the risks. And if the risk is sufficient to harm an individual, you're doing the wrong thing.
That's
At the end
true.
of the day, you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, I hope everybody has heard. I know I'll not mention specifically who, but we are having issues with the way data is being shared.
Oh, yeah. Especially right now as a country.
Now, it's just that we cannot mention.
We have very serious problems in this country regarding our data. That needs to, things need to change. Things need to change quickly.
And then say, anyway, so
and you said you were not mentioning.
Then I've tried the Caribbean to kidogo nisiguze kabisa, but these are the concerns that are on the ground. So maybe just before we conclude, first of all, thank you very much. I think going into this interview, we had an objective of creating awareness. I think we have done that, tethering or even getting people to be a little bit afraid of what's out there, which is very, very important. Because again, I always have a very simple quote. It's not bad to be guided by fear. It's an issue when you let it control your life. But as long as you're guided with it in the right manner, I think it can help you protect yourself from so many different things. So I think that's what we've been able to achieve in this particular podcast. And I'm sure For those of you who are celebrating this month, you can be able to, continue learning. I'm sure through your programs, through your company that you're directing. This is information that people can be able to access. And so as we conclude the interview, is there one thing you'd like to share with the listeners, just from the point of view of the theme of this month, which is Save Our World? Is there anything you'd like to share with the individuals and organizations just around the importance of staying safe in 2020? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So I'd just like to remind us all that your personal information is your whole identity. And moving outside of your personal information, there's also information that is important to you that is sensitive, either to you as an individual or to as an organization. You have been given the opportunities through legal measures that have given you the ability to control how your information is used. I would challenge that everyone takes the opportunity to learn about that. Please note that you have every right. It's a human right. Your privacy is a basic human right. So every individual has the right to actually question any organization that is collecting your data. You have a right to question what it is being used for. You have a right to withhold your information if you don't think the purposes, the reasons that you're being told that your information is being used for are appropriate. There are times I've had to walk away from buildings because they're insisting I leave my ID. And I'm like, I will not leave my ID. I do not understand why I am leaving my ID. Why do you need me to leave my ID? It makes no sense. And at times I've had to walk away. And particularly, I remember there's a time I was making a huge purchase. And I just called the people and told them, I'm no longer purchasing your product because I cannot even access your building because I'm being asked for, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And the management of that organization actually had to come down. And because they were the ones there, they were like, no, this is our guest. They left their own, they were like, we work here, we work here. This is our guest, let her come in. She's already given the number. She's already given the ID. Why do you need to,
So they still left the ID.
Them, because they work within the building. And so I think for them it is, I don't know whether it's a requirement or whatever, but I did not leave mine. I was really going to go away because it makes no sense. And and I'm not saying this to be rebellious or anything. This is a practice. If we are going to implement cybersecurity and information security and data protection correctly, then we need to point out the mistakes that we are making. And this is one of the biggest mistakes, because you can say that you're trying to collect this information from this individual for a specific purpose which does not make sense. But have you considered the harms to this individual? How many of us get rogue calls, rogue messages from you don't even know where? So you're exposing me in the name of trying that this information needs to be collected for security purposes, yet you are exposing me to risk. So these are the conversations that we need to have. So even you as citizens, we need to start questioning some of these activities that make no sense. Only if we speak as a voice can change be effected and implemented. And I'd like to challenge us. And for these organizations who are collecting this data, we are not saying don't collect data. You are guided by regulations that say collect only the information that is necessary. Please collect information that is necessary only. You don't need to collect more than you need. It exposes people to unnecessary harms. And that is not what we are hoping to achieve at the end of the day. So for organizations, let's make our services and products easier and more, and make it a more joyful experience for the people who we are trying to serve at the end of the day. So information is king. Information builds who you are and who I am as an individual and as an organization. Let's respect that information and protect it throughout the information life cycle. That's what I'd say.
Okay. So thank you very much. I must confess, as I shared, we have learned a lot from this particular experience. And hopefully, as we continue with the month of October, we can be able to open up this discussion even more through different forums, webinars, which we'll be sharing information as the month continues. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure to have you here with us. I think the engineer also have learned. Ken, I hope you've learned as much as I've seen you're a bit worried. But we've learned quite a bit from what you've been able to share with us. And for the rest of the listenership, thank you for taking the time to listen to this. And hopefully you'll continue following us as we open up this discussion. Otherwise, asanteni sana. For more episodes, just make sure that you follow the links which will be displayed below on our screen. And see you next time. Santi.
Nice.